What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Last Principles. I'm your host, M.A., former member of the ICOC, the International Churches of Christ, baptized on October 8th of 2000 and escaped in November of 2013. One thing that gets beaten into our heads as members of the ICOC is getting advice. You got to get advice. You got to get advice on everything. Now, if you've never had any experience with the ICOC, you might be sitting there wondering, what's bad about advice? Like, isn't getting advice a good thing? Yeah, getting advice is a good thing. In and of itself, in a vacuum, getting advice is great. Getting a lot of advice is great. But getting advice is one of the many things that were good in and of themselves, but the ICOC found a way to twist it into something it wasn't supposed to be. Practically, getting advice is great. If you are making a big decision in your life, if you are about to make a life-changing decision, you might want to get advice about it. You might want to have a plan in place and have people you trust in your life advising you on said plan. If you are about to do something you've never done before, you probably want to get advice from people who've done that thing before. Get advice from people who are good at that thing, from people who are as successful at that thing as you would like to be. Biblically, getting advice is good. All in the Proverbs, there are many scriptures that speak about getting advice, about how people who get advice, their plans succeed. People who don't get advice, their plans fail. So practically and biblically, advice is great. But here's where it goes left. In my opinion, getting advice was way overemphasized. You had to get advice on every damn thing. You had to, anything that you could think of, someone can make the argument that you need to get advice about doing it. Getting advice was overemphasized to the point of infantilization. Infantilization, that's one of the a new word that I've learned since I've been listening to. I keep hearing that word come up as I listen to and read other ex-ICOC testimonies. Infantilization basically means treating someone like they're a baby, treating someone like they're a child, as if they don't have the capacity to do adult things, right? This infantilization got so bad to the point where, you know what, before I make this statement, let me make it very clear who I'm criticizing. I'm not criticizing anyone who has left the ICOC and has gone through what I'm about to mention. What I am criticizing, what I am throwing shade at, is the ICOC itself, the organization, the system, all of that. That's what I'm criticizing. That's what I'm side-eyeing right now. But infantilization got so bad with the ICOC that you got grown-ass people who have left the ICOC who don't know how to make adult decisions for themselves because they've been conditioned so hard for so long to always have to run their decisions by somebody else before they go and do it. Before they make any move, that they got to go talk to their discipler about it. They got to go talk to the ministry leader about it. They've been conditioned for so long to think that they got to get approval for any decision they make. So like they get out into the real world and any decision they make, they feel like they got to ask like a dozen people before they actually make the move. They feel like they got to ask somebody who's an authority figure in their life before they move. And that just shouldn't be. And again, I'm not throwing shade at those people. They're a product of the system. They're a product of the organization. So this is not aimed at them. If you're one of those people out there and you're having a hard time with it, my heart goes out to you. Like I'm here for you. Like, I'm just saying it shouldn't have been. It never should have gotten to that point for you. And again, I'm blaming the ICOC. I'm blaming the system for that and not you. We all were in it. I'll give you an example in my life. This actually came while I was in there. This actually came early on in my tenure there. So just a little background on the situation and to fill y'all in for those of you who are new to the channel or just otherwise may not have watched one of my first couple of videos. So for all intents and purposes, I am from Atlanta, Georgia. Graduated from high school there. My first 2 years of college were in Tallahassee, Florida at Florida A&M University, FAMU. Go Rattlers. Now, I got baptized halfway through my first semester there. First semester, my grades were stellar. Like I had mostly A's, a couple of B's here and there, but mostly A's. What my parents pretty much expected from me. Now, my second semester, this is my first full semester as a quote unquote disciple. Like I'm starting the semester as a disciple as opposed to becoming one halfway through. And my grades plummeted. Like I don't know if I I don't remember failing any classes, but my GPA definitely wasn't where it needed to be, and therefore I lost a partial scholarship that I had. Now, I got to take some responsibility on myself because, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just giving context here. Was very smart growing up, had, advanced classes, AP classes, all that kind of stuff. And I was used to not having to study. So when it came time that I actually needed to study, I didn't know how to study. So that also mixed with the expectation of the ICOC to be at every damn event, every time, without fail. And the fact that and not just events, but like all the hangouts, which I did enjoy. I'll say that, which I did enjoy, but also all the hangouts, all the events, all the dates, every weekend. On top of that, when I came back after winter break, I found out I'm a Bible talk leader now. Voluntold. Didn't have any say in this. Didn't feel like I could say no. So all of this, I basically say this to say that even though, yes, I still have to take some responsibility for it, I can't say that all that other stuff wasn't a factor. And I'm pretty sure there's some other members who would agree as well. Other ex-members who would agree. Anyway, grades plummeted. And from that point on, my parents are pushing hard for me to come back home. Because they're like, hey, you can make them same lackluster grades at home for cheaper. Because, you go out of state for school. Them out of state fees are atrocious. Anyway, another thing that is a factor here is the fact that there's this idea of bloom where you're planted. That might be another video for another time, but to keep it short, what that means is wherever you get baptized at, that's where God wants you, aka that's where the leaders want you. But anyway, bloom where you're planted. So also there's the idea of here I am, send me. So we're taught to have this. We're taught to have this mentality of wherever God wants me to go, that's where I'll go. Again, what that really means is wherever the leaders want you to go, that's where you'll go. So add those two together. What that means is, hey, unless the leaders tell you, hey, we need you to go and we need you to leave here and go to this ministry. We need you to go move to this city to help this church out. We need you to go to this city to plant a church. We need you to go to this country to help plant a church. We need you to go to this country or we need you to go to this country to be on a mission trip or wherever. Unless the leaders tell you that you need to go somewhere, you need to stay your ass here. So that's what bloom where you're planted means. So I internalized that, and a bunch of other people did too. Like, it was even to the point where if you're a campus student who got baptized in that campus ministry, but you're from another city, they tried to convince you to not even go home for summer, partially because they drilled it in your head that, hey, those people who go home for the summer, they either fall away, they don't come back to school, or both. So I wasn't buying into it that much. Like, I still went home, but I vowed to come back and show everybody, hey, I'm not going to fall away. I'm going to come back even stronger. So I did make it back to Tallahassee the next year. I did make it back to school at FAMU. And my grades were just as bad those next two semesters as they were my second semester in my freshman year. And again, my parents are still pushing hard for me to come home. I had several phone conversations with them, like, hey, just tell me I need to get it together. I need to come back home. Like, there was legit times where I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm 4 hours away. I'm a 4-hour drive away. And I'm looking over my shoulder to see if my parents then came home to try to snatch me up and take me back home. Anyway, so get through that year. So next summer is there. It's the summer of 2002 now. I go home to Atlanta for a week. My parents surprised me with my first vehicle, got a 94 Nissan pickup. It was a manual as well. So my dad taught me within that week, taught me how to drive a stick. And I wasn't an expert, but I drove it well enough to be able to make a 4-hour drive and not have anything crazy happen. Anyway, I get back to Tallahassee, and so I got a job. I had this telemarketing job, but got fired from that within a month because I don't do well with sales. I don't do well with commission. I mean, you're talking to somebody who didn't do well with cold contact sharing his faith either. So that's par for the course. So lost that job. Now I do have a place to stay because there's a brother who he was living in an off-campus apartment style dorm, right? Just a block or two from FAMU. He had already moved out he had already moved out and started a household of brothers and an apartment. But he didn't need to be out of his dorm until the end of the summer. So he let me stay in his dorm room for free. So staying there, I lost that job. So I'm basically doing temp jobs from, different staffing agencies or whatever, doing those, hard manual labor. I'm doing that just to keep gas in the tank and food in the refrigerator. And the whole time my parents are pressuring me to come back home. Eventually got to the point where my dad basically threatened to come down to Tallahassee and take my truck if I didn't do what my parents thought I should do, which was come home. And I didn't like it at the time. I felt it was unfair. But, technically my dad, my parents, they bought the car. They put the down payment on it. They were making the payments. It was in their name. They're paying for the insurance. So technically, they'd have been in the right for doing so. So I got pressure on one end from my parents telling me I need to come home. On the other end, I got this internalized pressure from just the thought that, oh, you're supposed to be here in Tallahassee. You're supposed to be here in Tallahassee. Like I literally thought that that's where God wanted me. And in hindsight, I see it was the brainwashing. I see it was them putting that thought in my head. Hey, you're supposed to bloom where you're planted. So I just knew that that's where God wanted me. I just knew that was God's plan for me. I just knew that was where I was supposed to be. So even though it's hard for me, I ain't got no job. I'm doing temp jobs or whatever. It's hard living down there, but I was like, this is where God wants me. At the same time, my parents are trying to pressure me to come home. So I'm fighting between these two things. One day I'm venting to a brother that I'm close to down there, and he just kind of said something that blew my mind. Like literally had me like my brain broke. Like I'm on blue screen, reboot, all of that. My boy says to me, it's not really sin for you to go home. It's not sin for you to stay. It's really your decision. It's not wrong for you to go home. It's not wrong for you to stay. And my mind went, I know you can't see my hands by my head doing the whole mind blown thing right now. But that's really where I was at. Because so this is, going back to the main point of infantilization, the whole advice thing. I'm so used to being told what to do. I'm so used to being told what the right thing is. I'm so used to being told by people outside of me, people above me, that this thing is sin, this thing is not sin, this is the right move to do, this isn't the right move to do. I'm so used to getting that direction from other people and not myself that I'm like frozen. Like I don't know what to do with this information, that this thing is completely up to me. It's not right or wrong to do either. So I did give in and go ahead and move back home with my parents back in Atlanta. At the time, I would have said that I gave in to parent pressure, again, because I'm so convinced in my mind that I'm supposed to be in Tallahassee, that this is where God wants me. At the same time, I don't want that smoke with my parents. I don't want that conflict. So that's, why I moved home. In hindsight, it was a good move. In hindsight, it was the practical thing to do. And, looking back at it, I'm like, did God really want me in Tallahassee, or was that just the leaders? It was probably the latter. But I say all this to say that was infantilization on me. And as I think about it now, I'm actually very grateful for that situation, because that stunted my infantilization. Like, I'm not going to say I didn't get infantilized any further from that, but it was definitely a whole lot. I definitely would have been infantilized a whole lot more had that not happened, because the thing I did from that situation, I basically promised myself that any big situation, any big decision that needed to be made in my life from that point on, I'm going to know what I want to do. I'm going to know I'm going to know what my decision is going to be, regardless of what somebody else might think, regardless of what the church, my parents, whoever else might think. I'm going to know what I want to do from there. So that definitely helped me out from that. That helped me from getting to the point where, once I left, I was able to make adult decisions. Actually, it helped me with my exit, because, if y'all go back and watch that ICOC exit video, I'd already played that scenario in my head several times. So that way, when it finally came, I knew what I'd do. Like, there was no hesitation. Boom, I'm gone. I'm out. So yeah, we get conditioned so hard for so long that any move we make, we got to get somebody else's approval. We got to talk to several people about it. We got to talk to people above us about it before we make that move. So one major thing about getting advice, you can't just get advice from any damn body. No. Like, if you were making a small decision, you might get away with just asking any random disciple or any person that you're close to. But any decision bigger than a smaller decision, like medium decisions and above, you got to at least talk to your discipler about it, or talk to your Bible talk leader if they're not one and the same, or your ministry leader or the evangelist, whoever. You got to talk to somebody above you. And there's two reasons for that. One, similar to the whole, because we talked about a few videos ago, we talked about the whole steady dating thing and how all that information had to go up through the leadership chain. Leadership got to know everything. They got to know everything that's happening. They got to know who's into what sin, who's dating who's getting baptized, who's studying with who, all in between. It was like legal gossip or something. But leadership had to know everything. So that's why when you got advice, you couldn't just get advice from anybody. You had to get advice from somebody higher up than you on the leadership chain. So that way, all that information was given to the hive, basically. The other reason is advice really equaled permission. Not all the time, but way too often. More often than not, advice really equaled permission. So somebody above you got to sign off on whatever move you're making. Somebody above you has to approve it. So it wasn't uncommon for someone to ask you, did you get advice on that? And it really meant, did you get permission to do that? Did somebody sign off on that? Did somebody approve that? Did one of the leaders co-sign on you doing that? That's what that really meant. So yeah, did you get advice on that? Really meant, did you get permission to do that? There's another thing that this could mean. Did you get advice on that? Depending on the context and the tone in which it said, did you get advice on that? If it said in this tone, did you get advice on that? Sis, did you get advice on that? Bro, did you get advice on that? Did you get advice on that? What that really meant is that was basically a passive aggressive way of saying, you know what? I don't think what you're doing is a good idea. I think you're in sin doing that. I don't think the leadership is going to approve of that. So that was basically a passive aggressive way of saying that. Either I think you're in sin and I don't want to tell you directly. I don't think that's a good idea and I don't want to tell you directly, or I just don't approve of what you're doing and I don't want to say it that way. Now, I'll give a little bit of credit on the sister's end, because that did tend to be a phrase that a sister might say to a brother. And while it was still annoying as hell, and I still think is whack, I'm going to give the sisters a little bit of grace on that, because the sisters were taught to never challenge brothers. They were taught to never rebuke brothers or disciple brothers or anything like that. So if a sister was really trying to look out for you, or at least was trying to help you not get in trouble, she might say to you, bro, did you get advice on that? And again, I'm not condoning that, because I still think it's whack as hell. But again, I can't blame the sisters too much, because that was their way of trying to help you not get in trouble without also getting themselves in trouble. But yeah, did you get advice on that really meant either did you get permission to do that, or I don't think what you're doing is a good idea. Now, lastly, regarding advice, you'll have some people who will say, oh, well, advice is just advice. You don't really have to follow it. Bullshit. I am calling pure bullshit on that. Here's the thing. That is some gaslighting for your ass right there. Now, I say gaslighting because, okay, for those of you who don't know what that means, you might have heard the phrase. It has become a bit of a buzzword nowadays. It does tend to get overused and misused. Some of y'all might have heard it and rolled your eyes. You might be tired of hearing it. I get it. Also, just because you're tired of hearing it, that doesn't mean it's not a thing. Gaslighting is basically causing someone to, and sometimes gaslighting is malicious and on purpose, and sometimes it's by accident. But gaslighting is basically causing someone to question their own reality, question their own memories. One of my favorite examples of gaslighting is back in a year or two after I became a disciple, there was a video by an artist named Shaggy, and it was a song called "It Wasn't Me." So there's another guy singing on the song with him, and the guy got caught cheating by his girlfriend, and she caught in the act of doing it, and even got him on camera. I don't know if she had a camcorder or if there was security in the house or whatever, but she caught him on camera, and caught him on camera, caught him with her own eyes. Shaggy basically tells him, say it wasn't you. There's a legit tweet out there that says Shaggy's "It Wasn't Me" is 3.5 minutes of a dude being like, damn, baby, you gonna believe your own eyes over me? That's crazy. That's legit gaslighting. Like how can you get caught in the act? Someone see you doing it and then telling you know what? No, you didn't see what you saw. You're not remembering it right. You didn't really see that. You didn't really see me cheating on you. That's the perfect example of gaslighting. So how are you getting gaslit by the phrase, oh, advice is just advice? Advice is just advice. You don't have to follow it. That's what the ICOC will say officially. That's what they'll say on paper. But in practice, it's completely different. Similar to the whole idea that they no longer believe they're the only church. They say that officially they say that on paper. But if you're still in the ICOC right now, or you're listening to this, put that into practice. Test that out and see what happens. Just be upfront and brazen about the fact that you're going to go to a different church this Sunday, a church that's not ICOC, and watch what happens. Say that you're going to date somebody who's not a member of the ICOC. Just be upfront. Just be upfront about it and see what happens. Study the Bible with a friend or family member and come back to the leaders and say, you know what? I stopped studying with my friend because, I looked into, we did the studies and they're biblically saved. They don't need to get baptized. They can just go ahead and join the church. Try that and see what happens. Similarly, advice is just advice. If advice is really just advice, put that to the test. Try it. Try making any move in your life without getting any advice from somebody in the ICOC and see what happens. Try getting advice and not following it and watch what happens. This is the thing, because if advice is just advice, you shouldn't get in trouble for not following advice or not getting advice, because that legit happens. You can get in trouble. You get discipled, rebuked, whatever, or worse for not following advice or for not getting advice before making certain moves in your life. If advice is really just advice, there's no way you get in trouble simply for not following advice or not getting it. The only trouble that should come from you not getting advice is whatever natural consequence that comes with not getting advice for that or not following advice for that. So let's do something simple. Say I'm dropping a friend off at their house after whatever we just did. Dropping a friend off, my friend looks at my car and my friend sees that my gas light is on and says, "Hey, you should probably get some gas on the way home so you don't have to stop and get it in the morning." And I say, no, I'm good. I should be all right. And then the next morning I oversleep. So now I'm running late or I'm already late and I got to get gas. So now I got to make the decision between either getting to work on time or not being as late as I could be. And risking like running out of gas, or I go get gas and then guarantee that I'm going to be late. If I would have followed that advice, I wouldn't be in that predicament. That's the only trouble I should get in for not following advice. I shouldn't be in trouble with the person who told me that advice. Another thing, I just started my voiceover career. I'm got a few gigs here and there, not enough to quit my day job, but that's the goal. The goal is to quit the day job. One piece of advice I got, this wasn't advice that I sought out. It was just something and this was general advice to people who were starting their own business. I had a colleague say, "Hey, before you get your LLC," and I'd already got my LLC at that point. He was saying to the crowd, before you get your LLC, make sure you trademark your business name. So I took that and ran with it. I'm like, okay, let me go get trademarked. I should have stopped and asked people. I should have stopped and asked for some kind of advice on that, because I didn't get in trouble per se, but I would have saved myself a lot of time, energy, and money had I actually stopped and asked, for help on that. So if I could have done it all over again, I would have stopped and done some research, talked to some people who may have already gotten their business trademarked, all that kind of stuff. I would have stopped and done that. Now, again, I didn't get in trouble, but there was money wasted, there was time wasted, all that kind of stuff. That's the only thing that should have come from me not getting advice. I didn't get in trouble with anybody in particular. But that's not how the ICOC works. If you don't get advice on something, or if someone gives you advice and you don't follow it, you in trouble. You getting discipled, you getting rebuked, you getting, I don't know what else could come from that. But yeah, you getting in trouble. Like, you should not get in trouble for not following somebody's advice. If advice is really just advice, then a leader should not be feeling disrespected because you didn't follow their advice. Big shout out to Austin Null over at the Crumpled Papers podcast. This section of the video was inspired by an episode of the Crumpled Papers podcast in which Austin, I'm not going to go into detail about what happened in that episode because I basically just don't want to misquote what happened. I can't, my memory is fuzzy on all the details, but what I do remember, I remember Austin expressing how he got in trouble with a leader for not following this leader's advice. This leader felt disrespected because Austin did not follow his advice. How? I don't know what. And then also, I think they kind of got into it with his parents because like he was a teen at the time, and Austin decided to go with what his parents advised him to do and not with what the leader advised him to do. And the leader felt like his word should have superseded what his parents wanted him to do. I don't know if that's pride, arrogance, ego, hubris, whatever word fits there. But how the hell do you feel disrespected because somebody didn't follow your advice? That's crazy to me. So yeah, if advice is just advice, you shouldn't get in trouble for not following it. If advice is just advice, the person giving you the advice should not feel disrespected because you didn't follow it or because you didn't come to them for advice. So yeah, they'll say advice is just advice, but in practice, it really ain't. In practice, advice is really permission. In practice, advice is a command, an order from the leaders, because if you don't follow it, you're in trouble with them. They feel disrespected. They feel slighted by the fact that you didn't follow it or that you didn't come to them for advice. Oh, one more thing I forgot. Advice is just advice is their way of backtracking. Like, say you followed somebody's advice and that advice didn't go well. Like, you following their advice didn't get you the desired result, whatever that means for you. They'll say, oh, well, advice is just advice. You really didn't have to follow it. Again, bullshit, because if you didn't follow that advice, you're in trouble. But if you do follow that advice and it doesn't go well, oh, well, it really is just advice. You didn't have to follow it. So that's their way of like saving face. That's their CYA right there. That's just their way of covering themselves if things don't go right. So they'll tell you, oh, advice is just advice. You really didn't have to follow it. You didn't have to follow my advice. But yeah, if you don't follow my advice, you're in trouble. But if you follow my advice and it doesn't go well, I'm not held responsible. That's it. That's all I got for this, y'all. Y'all hit me up in the comments. Let me know if y'all got anything to add, any topics y'all want me to cover. If I am experienced enough in a topic, I will cover it. I'm going to stop saying that. I'm going to stop reaching out for interviews because I'm just really behind on that. Ain't no telling when I'm going to get caught up. So I'm going to stop. I don't want to keep making promises I can't keep. So I don't want to keep letting y'all down. So I'm not saying I'm not doing any more interviews. I definitely am. But I'm just not soliciting for them because ain't no telling when I'm going to get caught up. I just don't want to keep not keeping my word here. So they'll come as they come. My apologies to anybody who's wanted to be interviewed and I just haven't got to you. Life just done got in the way. I'm sorry. I will try to make it up when I can. But yeah, that's it. Again, y'all hit me up in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. I'm here for you. If you are an ex-member, I'm here to just validate you. I'm here to let you know you ain't crazy. I'm here to do the opposite of gaslighting for you. I'm here to just be an extra voice. You know, I mean, there's other people out there who are sharing their stories, other people who are interviewing out there. Losing My Religion, Nikita Lambert and Asha, Crumpled Papers podcast, new one I just found, The Balanced Male, Roy Clemens over there, my man Aldo B. Martin, of course, last but not least, over at the Reclamation podcast. It's over. You know, he's not doing those episodes anymore, but there's still, you know, there's a gold mine of stuff for y'all to listen to if you're an ex-member. But yeah, I'm just out here just being another voice. I'm here to validate you. I'm here to let you know you're not crazy. I'm here to let you know that you're not bitter. And even if you are bitter, you're allowed to be bitter. Here's that thought that you're allowed to be bitter. You're allowed to have some bad thoughts about what you've been through. You're allowed to be hurt. You're allowed to feel hurt. Damn it. Anyway, that's it. Y'all have a good night. And I will see y'all at the next video. Peace.